Okay, for those of you that were watching my last video regarding the timeline of the ransom notes, when they were received, when they were published, and what was said in those notes, I was talking about missing links, and it was just a mess trying to figure out the timeline. And then I wanted to go into some research I did about abductions that are mob related, and my video cut off. So this is part two. I was going to do it a different night, but I decided I'm just going to continue on for those of you that were watching that video, so you can see the part two of it. So this is part two. We are talking about the missing Nancy Guthrie case that we just went over the timeline. I do have another video on the timeline of what happened the day she went missing, which was February 1st. The first press release was on February 2nd. And then a week later, the circus begins with the news media and the ransom notes. So part of my video is going to go into mob-related crimes. Doesn't specifically say just in the U.S. It can be international. These are international mob crimes. I tried to pull up some abduction cases that AI said there's tons of them, but each one directed me to the FBI's website, and those links are gone. Or some of the specific cases I was looking at that gave me a snippet of how horrendous the abductions were. The FBI's website would show the article of the case, but there's no abduction in there. So I asked AI, why is the abduction piece missing? And they said they probably pleaded to a lesser charge. And that's why it's not in the article on the FBI, because you can go to the FBI's website and look up cases and articles. But all of the ones that AI told me about abductions the links are gone, or there's some articles and it looks like they were involved in just some, financial crimes, no abductions. So we don't have any verified links about it. So I decided to go into who are the criminals surfacing right now and what are they involved in. So the first one that pops up is the Italian American Mafia, and that's the most notable one. They were involved, and they probably still are, in racketeering, extortion, protection schemes, loan sharking, high interest illegal loans, gambling operations, labor union corruption, drug trafficking, money laundering, murder and violent enforcement, fraud and tax crimes, illegal waste disposal. Now, they were big in the 60s and 70s when I was growing up. That's a Sicilian mob too, but that didn't show up. One that showed up is Russian Eurasian, I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, organized crime. And we're talking all over the world. So they're organized all over the world, not just here in the United States. What are they responsible for? Extortion and racketeering, contract killings, cybercrime, ransomware hacking. So they could have just hacked into my video and shut it down. But so cybercrime. So we want to know why the ransom notes and the Bitcoin and the Nancy Guthrie case can't be traced. I mean, these organized crimes involved in that. They know how to do all that. They do it all the time. Human trafficking, drug trafficking, arms trafficking, money laundering, fraud and financial crimes, kidnapping for ransom, rare but documented, and smuggling networks. Now, Mexican cartels was the organized crime that was actually been mentioned a lot, where a lot of people think might be related to the Nancy Guthrie case. So let's see what pulled up. Drug trafficking, cocaine, meth, heroin, fentanyl, kidnapping, ransom, intimidation, human smuggling, arms trafficking, extortion, oil theft and resource crimes, money laundering, mass violence and mass violence. Then we also have outlaw cycle gangs, Hell's Angels, Banditos, and Mongols. They're involved in drug trafficking, weapons trafficking, extortion, violent assaults, robbery, kidnapping, and prostitution rings. So would we say that Savannah Guthrie has been extorted for money? I'm not sure if that's the correct term. Especially if some of those ransom notes are not legitimate. But I think extortion really has to do with, something a little bit than that. But anyway, Chinese triads, that's another group. They're responsible for human trafficking, drug trafficking, illegal gambling, extortion, counterfeit goods, and money laundering. Well, somebody definitely planned on laundering the Bitcoin. So, who's responsible for money laundering so far is the Mexican cartels and Russian organized crime and the Italian mafia, the Italian American mafia. So I guess it's very possible that we can't trace the Bitcoin that was supposed to be deposited in the account. So if anybody's wondering, that's part of money laundering. So motorcycle gangs, Chinese triads, Japanese yakuza. They're involved in extortion, illegal gambling, human trafficking, drug trafficking, corporate fraud, construction industry corruption, and money laundering. Albanian organized crime, cocaine and heroin trafficking, human trafficking, contract killings, extortion, money laundering. So we don't have any for Martha that's just joined in live, my first video got cut off right when I was going into this part of it. I was trying to see if there was any abductions in the US and how many there were related to organized crime. And a whole bunch popped up and they looked horrific, these little articles. I mean, where they tortured these people. And I'm like, well, what about not the ones that were inner fighting in their group, kidnappings that were unrelated to their group, inside their group. So some of them popped up, gave me links to the FBI website, but it's been removed. It's not in there anymore. So we can't find those articles and what they actually did. So it could be pretty prevalent. Looked real prevalent when I was first searching, and all of a sudden it's gone. Mexican cartels by far the highest kidnapping rate. Ransom kidnappings, express kidnappings, quick ATM extortion, kidnappings of migrants, kidnappings for intimidation, and kidnappings of rival groups. They are number one by a huge margin. Wow. A lot of people speculated that it was the Mexican cartels that was responsible for this. Interesting. Colombian and South American crime groups. Colombia historically had the world's highest crime rates, kidnapping rates, due to ransom kidnappings, political kidnappings, and criminal group kidnappings. I think it's in Colombia and South America where you hear Americans go there on a trip or something, or they're out in the middle of nowhere. These groups see this, these Americans, and they're like, oh, we can get money from, and they do. And these people, saved because they paid the money. So they don't typically kill them. They exchange the person they kidnapped for the money. But they're in another country when they kidnap the Americans, so they're a little bit more protected than somebody in the country here that's kidnapping somebody and then plans on giving them back to the family without being caught. They're more likely to get caught here. So I don't know if you can compare that. Colombia and South American crime groups, ransom kidnappings, political kidnappings, and criminal group kidnappings. These groups are number 2 globally. We could go on and on, but let's look at what about here in the US? Because that was my first search, and then I was trying to find links, and the links went nowhere. Which groups operate inside the US? Let's see if we can get the computer to cooperate. This was what I was trying to do when I was live, and the cursor went like that and clicked my video off. So let's look at this. Which organized crime groups that actively, it's thinking, Italian American Mafia, Casa Nostra. These guys look scary. They're still active in New York, New Jersey, Philadelphia, Chicago, and Boston. Their primary crimes are racketeering, extortion, loan sharking, gambling operations, labor union corruption, fraud, and tax crimes. Kidnapping, rare today, mostly historical. So that's kind of weird. Mexican cartels operating through US cells are active in Arizona, Texas, California, New Mexico, Midwest distribution hubs. Drug trafficking, human smuggling, extortion, money laundering. These characters are ruthless. To think that someone like that took your mother, your elderly mother, is just horrific. Think about it. And I think the last ransom note that said she was buried in nature, and it might have been a female, and they were more empathetic, that it was an accident that she died, like a burglary gone wrong. To calm the public down, to put a kibosh on the Nancy Guthrie case, being in the news. Somebody wants this case to stop, maybe. And that's why they put it in there, because it's horrific to think about. But yeah, they're responsible for human smuggling. You think someone that smuggles a human has any empathy for an elderly woman? I don't think so. Russian Eurasian organized crime. They are still active in New York, Los Angeles, Miami, Chicago, and Atlanta. Their primary crimes are extortion, money laundering, cybercrime, fraud rings, and arms trafficking. What does extortion mean? I want to make sure we get this right. because I think I'm confusing it. Martha, do you have any questions? While my computer's like still having issues here. Oh, I know, my phone. What's the definition of extortion? I just want to see if it fits the Nancy Guthrie case. The act of obtaining money, property, or services through coercion, threats, or the misuse of authority. Unlike robbery, where the property is taken by immediate force, extortion involves a threat of future harm to a person's safety, reputation, or finances. Types of extortion: blackmail, coercion. I don't think it would be considered extortion. So we'd have to outrule that out. I just thought that it is kind of threatening to know they have your mother and you need to pay. But I guess that's called a kidnapping for ransom. So, those are our options: kidnapping for ransom, burglary gone wrong, or kidnapping, or they abducted her. She has been abducted. That makes sense to me now. I just wonder if these kidnappers were hired by someone. Who? Well, there were some searches done early on after Savannah did a hometown piece where she went back to her hometown and she talked about growing up in that area where her mother lived. I don't know, Tucson. Obviously Pima County, and they showed her at a restaurant with her mother, who did not look vulnerable. She looked pretty healthy and younger than she is. And after that piece in December, there were searches of how much Savannah makes and where Nancy lives. So there was a Google search of those two items. I think there was lots of Google searches, but Megan Kelly posted it in a video a couple of days ago about that. But my thing is, if there's only a couple searches after that piece appeared, why can't they contact Google, get a warrant, and find out who did those searches? So somebody could have seen her on the air. How much Savannah makes is they wanted to know what she was worth. And they may not have thought that Nancy was vulnerable, because a lot of people say there's no way they kidnapped an elderly woman. She wouldn't have lived, but she didn't look vulnerable in the piece. It was just like you can find out trends of what's being searched. There's some way to find out how many people searched. I would do it right now, but my computer's like really acting up. Like you can just go. What's trending at the time usually pops up soon when you put in a term, but you can probably find out what the trend is. There's some way. I don't know. maybe I'll find out more about Google searches. I've heard two different stories. I heard a lot of people searched about Savannah after that aired, and then Megan Kelly said there was one particular search of what Savannah made and where the mother lived. They might have been related. That's why she's saying where the mother lived, because a lot of people might have searched how much money Savannah made, but there'd have been a particular search. Yeah, but why can't they get a search warrant to find out who that person was? There's a lot of things weird in this case. What's really weird is, yeah, so it could be kidnapping. They kidnapped her for ransom and she died, because the very first ransom note does not offer proof of life. But what they do offer is some details of the room of inside the house that nobody would have known, unless you were the detectives that were taking fingerprints, the day that she went missing. Those the only people that would have known besides the family. Savannah's sister, Annie, possibly Annie's husband, or they could have, Annie or Tommaso, the husband, could have mentioned some details to somebody. So we don't know if ransom notes are fake. There's a lot of controversy about whether they're fake or not. And some retired FBI detectives can't really comment too much on them. They can only speculate because they don't see the full notes. But they are saying, why don't they just post them at this point? So we can look at them, each note. So that might be coming. Stay tuned. Because in my first video that got cut off, I go into the timeline of when the notes arrived, who they were sent to, the dates they were sent, and then another group of a timeline is when they were posted to the public, each note,